Hey everyone, welcome to a special edition of the Evening Dish. I'm your host, Marley Tuskus. We have a great show for you tonight because it is the official schedule release of the Buffalo Bills. It's a day that many Bills fans have been waiting for, even with all the leaks throughout the day. I feel like it's always exciting when 8 o'clock hits and we know exactly who the Bills are playing when they are playing. So let's get right.
Typically the home team has a pretty big advantage because the Ravens are really good at M&T Bank, and we know how good the Bills are at home. So it's going to be a heck of a way to open up the season. And of course, you've got Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, which the NFL tends to hook their wagons to the premier quarterbacks, and the Bills have one of them, and so do the Ravens.
I think two things stick out for me. One, the online discourse from this game is going to be enormous. We got months upon months to ponder on this. Josh versus Lamar, Sean McDermott versus John Harbaugh. I can't wait to stay off of X during that time. But also, I think from a Bills perspective, in terms of preparing for the Baltimore Ravens, they're so unique on offense with the creative things they do with Lamar Jackson. You have all offseason to prepare for that instead of 5 to 6 days to do so. So I think getting them week one allows the Bills to get a bit of a jump start on game prep, taking on that explosive Ravens offense.
Yeah, and for the Bills fans going to the game, it's a primetime game on September 7th. It's probably going to be as good of a weather as you can ask for during Bills season. It might be a really nice day for all the Bills fans to start camping out probably sometime on August 7th before they can get to that game.
How do you think, and I know we saw it previously, but how do we think that Lamar is going?
That's a unique dynamic, that offense, that you don't see a lot in the NFL because Lamar can do it with his arm and his legs, and of course Derrick Henry is an absolute monster. The other thing is, when they played him in the postseason, they didn't have Zay Flowers, which is such a huge part of their offense. You got to assume that he'll be back and healthy, and I haven't read anything where he won't be ready to go at the start of the season. If he is, that's a little different beast there.
The Bills put a lot of resource into the defense.
Yeah, those rookies are going to get tested early.
Welcome to the big leagues. I can't wait for that.
There's a lot of potential for a Ravens redemption story in that week one. Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews coming back to Buffalo, the scene where their season ended last year, but much nicer weather, different circumstances. You mentioned Zay Flowers and the health of certain players. And the Bills didn't lose a home game last year. Very tough at home in all situations, especially in that home opener. But this could be a chance for the Ravens to sort of prove that they're better than they showed the last time they were in that stadium.
I want to touch on looking at this schedule. The team, of course, is calling this the farewell season. This is their last season at this current Highmark Stadium before, of course, they move across the street to the new Highmark Stadium. There are multiple home games at the start of this schedule. And, of course, later on in the later half of the schedule, a few away games, but again, they end their season at home against the Jets. So I feel like you couldn't have asked almost for a better schedule to end at this stadium.
Yeah, the regular season, the NFL went, who can we give them? The last regular season game. And the Jets were like, that seems like a good team to give them because you got to, just the way the Jets are constructed right now, there's no reason to really believe that they're going to be playing for anything that late in the year. And quite frankly, there's a chance that the Bills aren't playing for anything. So it will. Look, there's going to be a lot of hype around it because it's the last regular season game, but there's also a chance that Josh Allen goes out, hands off one time, and leaves the game, just like we saw last year in New England against the Patriots, where that game just didn't mean anything. And the worst thing you can do is, get any starters injured. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all kind of unfolds, but there's a chance that, and that's why it's TBD. We don't know a time of that game yet because there's a chance that ends up at 1 o'clock on Sunday because it's just two teams who one is getting ready to get their golf clubs and go to the offseason, and the other team is getting ready for the playoffs.
The Bills are hopeful that that's not the last game ever at Highmark. They're hopeful that they win the division and they have one more or maybe even 2 or 3 more opportunities to play at Highmark. But when I saw it was the Jets, that was my first thought. I'm like, please don't let this be a game where Josh Allen hands it off to James Cook, and that's the last time you see 17, and now he has to ball cap the rest of the game. So I'm hoping it's not like that, but that's what the schedule makers gave us.
The funny thing is I'm sure a lot of Bills fans are hoping it's going to be like that in some way, right?
Yeah, I think so. I would say, yeah. I mean, that means you've sewn up your playoff spot. You get Josh Allen to rest, and you don't have to worry about any of those injuries.
I think for the stakes of that game, maybe we're hoping that that's a game for the division title. I don't know if the Jets are going to fulfill that end of the bargain, but I think that would be pretty interesting if the Bills need to win that game to ensure winning the division and then playing another home game a week later, or if they lose that game, it is the last game of the stadium. That could make that a fun atmosphere for that game.
Yeah,
Marley, you brought up, and because I want to mention this because I thought this was a really good point. 4 of the first 5 games are at home.
Right.
I mean, they go Baltimore, then at Jets, and then it's Dolphins home, Saints home, Patriots home. That is a really nice stretch of those are very, very winnable games, especially after that Ravens game. They clip that one, and you're looking at 4, or then the Jets, who you'd think that should be a win. Then they've got 3 straight at home, and then at Atlanta, which they're not in the same league as the Bills. They could build a cushion in that division really early on, and maybe kind of take hold of that number 1 seed or one of the top 2 seeds pretty early on.
When I look at that 6-game stretch, a couple things stick out. One, when you play Justin Fields right after Lamar Jackson, similar style quarterback and offenses, so you'll have some ways to prepare and proof of concept in what you just saw in Lamar Jackson. But then you have a Thursday. Now, I always look at the quick turnarounds. Where are the good days where you have Sunday to Thursday? I know Sean McDermott, that's probably the first thing he paid attention to is like, all right, where are my 3-day rest turnarounds? The first one of the year is going to be the Jets, at the Jets, and you come back home on that Thursday night against the Dolphins. A Miami team who historically gets off to a fast start every single year. Now, last year, things didn't look super hot for them when the Bills went down to South Florida and got it done. But getting them that early in the year is usually when they're clicking on all cylinders.
You'd rather be the home team with that short turnaround for the Thursday night game, and the Bills have that early in the season against Miami. Not the case when they play a Thursday night game at Houston later in the season. 4 of the first 5 games at home is a great way to get started. It's great fan experience to have those home games in September, especially some of these being primetime games where you can have a long day of hanging out at the stadium, tailgating, things like that. But playing 4 of the first 5 at home means they're going to play 6 of 9 on the road midseason when maybe injuries are piling up or different factors that could make that more difficult at that point of the season. So the Bills kind of need to win a lot of these home games early on in order to not put themselves behind the 8 ball when they start playing road games and the schedule gets tougher in the middle of the season.
One of the other things I wanted to point out that you had brought up the other day was the possibility of a holiday game. Now we know officially no holidays.
Thank goodness.
Yeah,
I know
sure.
that. Here's the thing.
One holiday.
Fans are split.
Monday night against the Falcons, that's going to be on a holiday weekend in October. It's not a major holiday. It's not Christmas. It's not Thanksgiving. But it's a 3-day weekend for people that might be wanting to make that trip or need the day off from work to attend that game or stay up late to watch Monday Night Football. It's the early kickoff on Monday Night Football, which I like covering those.
Yeah. But to me, like no Thanksgiving and no Christmas, no Black Friday game. One of the other things that, speaking of the Christmas thing, I don't want to go too far down and pass up all these games, but it was interesting because there were some reports out there that the Eagles game was going to be Saturday, that standalone game after Christmas. It's not. It's actually Sunday, December 28th, because this year the NFL has, they have the Christmas games, and then they had the Friday off, and then Saturday they have one standalone game. I don't know who it is off the top here because I just have the Bills schedule up, but a lot of people thought that was going to be the Bills and Eagles, which would have made sense. I mean, you want a standalone game on Saturday. That's a heck of one to have. But it's not. It's going to be Sunday, December 28th is going to be that standalone, or sorry, not the standalone game, but at home against the Eagles. So that was one of those things that were tweaked a little bit from what a lot of things that were getting reported.
The Eagles game, I am kind of surprised it's as late in the season as it is. I saw some people bring up the fact that what if neither of these teams have anything to play for at this point, which, could be a possibility.
I assume that will be a November game. When you think of last year when the Bills had that gauntlet where it was against the Los Angeles Rams, Detroit Lions, they came back to Highmark Stadium and played the San Francisco 49ers. And before that, they played the Chiefs. Usually that's when the NFL likes to spotlight the premier games. I'm not sure why they chose to put this game, December 28th, but like you said, I hope it's not a scenario where the Chiefs locked up the 1 seed and the Bills are in a similar situation as to where we aren't getting these teams at full throttle. But I'll say this. Sean McDermott is very competitive, and so is Nick Sirianni. Mm-hmm. If there's anything at stake in those games, I imagine they'll be going all out.
And that could be the case, but it takes a lot for a team to lock up the number 1 overall seed with 2 games left in the regular season. And I would find it to be unlikely that that's happening in both the AFC and the NFC to make that mean that neither one of these teams. It could be a case where one team has more to play for than the other. And there's that Super Bowl preview aspect of it where these two teams might think they're playing each other again in a month. Well, in that case, then maybe
it's a little more vanilla.
Yeah.
Then it's a little more. Well, we don't want to show everything we have up our sleeve. Maybe we'll hold a few things back because they could be on a collision course.
Yeah.
You brought up a good point. It's a homecoming for Nick Sirianni.
Right, and the Bills have played against the Eagles since Nick Sirianni's been the coach, but this will be the first time he's coming back to Buffalo as the coach of the Eagles. Sean McDermott's from Philadelphia too, so there's always that kind of game within a game going on there between those coaches and their hometowns and their fan bases and some split rooting interest for the people down in the southern tier.
And I've always thought that, Sean owes a lot and has a lot of gratitude toward the Eagles and Philadelphia and their organization. But let's face it, he still got fired. He still got fired by the Philadelphia Eagles. And I don't care what profession you're in. If you get fired and let go by somebody and you get a chance to stick it to them, you want to do that. That's just life, and that's just so. That's always an interesting dynamic there.
One of the things that I think will be interesting to see, especially talking about a lot of the home games at the beginning, are the games that Bills Mafia will travel for. Of course, fans have such a reputation in this league for turning away stadiums into a home field advantage. One of the games I think will be really interesting is the Cleveland game, Carl.
Shout out to, I'm a Cleveland native. Josh is also from the NEO area, so I think that's an opportunity to hop west on I-90 and go down there and look, whoever is the Browns quarterback at that point, Shedeur Sanders, if y'all want to go see Deion's son, Colorado season will be over by that point. So you can see Deion Sanders in the flesh if you want to.
He may be coaching at that point.
I'm not putting nothing past what's going on in the Cleveland organization right now, but I think that's an easy opportunity for Bills Mafia to go and see the Bills' quick trip. And another opportunity that we talked about before we went live, the Bills going down to Miami this year in November. Yep. One positive. It's not going to be 100 degrees, knocking on some wood right now. I never know about South Florida. But also for you college football fans, Syracuse plays in Miami the day before. So if you want to double dip and watch the Orange play on Saturday and then watch the Bills play the Dolphins on Sunday, I think that's a good opportunity to turn a nice football weekend trip down to South Florida.
Another good travel one is coming out of the bye week. That's when they go to Carolina. So to me, that's an interesting one because maybe, you didn't have a game the week before to go tailgate at, and you got to kind of sit back a little bit. Maybe you saved a day off on that Monday that you normally take off. So you switch it now, and maybe you go to Carolina a little bit early. I think that's a trip that a lot of fans are probably going to make that trip. That's end of October. Mm-hmm. So it's still nice in this area then. I actually love the weather around the end of October, but it'll be really nice in the Carolinas. So I know a lot of friends of mine who are golfers that they're already like, where can I get a tee time in Carolina? So I think we'll see a lot of Bills fans at that one.
I think Charlotte also has a lot of Buffalo transplants in that area
Sure.
too. So that will be a game that we'll see a lot of people who are now living in Carolina that end up going to the game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. If you've ever been down to Charlotte, there's almost as many West New Yorkers there
Yeah.
as there are up here sometimes. And I think they like that game, that point in the schedule when the weather, it's always nicer than it is up here down there, but it's still a nicer part of the year down there in North Carolina. Another note on that Miami game, that comes down in Miami on November 9th, 2 days before Veterans Day holiday. So that could be another long weekend, get some days off for work, allow people to extend their stay down in Florida for a couple of days, or just make it easier to travel back.
And they're
forth.
going to Miami no matter what.
Right.
Like, let's face it, it doesn't. They can play that game in April. They can play it. It doesn't matter. Bills fans, when they see Miami on the schedule, it's almost a lock. The first road game that I covered 11 seasons ago now was down in Miami, and the sports camera guy Scott Swenson was like, "Wait till you see our plane when we get on this." And I'm like, "Okay, this will be interesting." And we get on, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" Everybody had Bills gear on. I was like, "This is wild!" And they started the chants, and now I'm used to it at this point. But that was a little bit of an eye opener. My first road trip, being down in Miami, I was like. Then of course I get to Miami and it's September, and I'm like, they're playing on the sun right now.
One thing we don't have with this schedule that I can see is a warm weather team coming to Buffalo during the snowy months, the snowy times of year.
Good
Tampa
point.
Bay's here on November 16th. That could be snow. It won't be warm, but not.
It's not going to be bitter.
Right. It's probably not going to be a blizzard game or a really intense weather event for the Buccaneers coming on the road for that game. And so that's a good thing for the fans and whatnot, but sometimes for the Bills, it's a competitive advantage when some of these teams come and play in Buffalo and aren't used to that.
I thought it was interesting to see the Bills are staying relatively close to home, especially compared to other teams. One of the places Bills Mafia will not be traveling to are any international games. I know for my family, we were bummed. We were hoping Ireland was on the list. It's not going to happen. But yeah, no international games this year. But I'm sure the players are probably breathing a sigh of relief.
So is Josh Reed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Look, I'm never going to say no to Dublin, right? I mean, anybody would sign up to go cover a game there. I've done both the London games, which it's great. It's a good experience and all. The other thing we're not going to do this year is travel to Kansas City, at least not in the regular season.
There you go.
So that's a huge victory because I'm done with the barbecue. Like, I'm fine with it. Like, look, I get it. They've got great barbecue, but we're going to Houston and we're going to Carolina. So I've got plenty of opportunities to get barbecue. I don't need to go Kansas City to the same restaurants that I've been now 7, 8 straight years. Now, is there a chance that they end up there in the postseason? Sure, but at least in the regular season, no trip to Kansas City, which is it's a sigh of relief.
If you need good food, though, when you go to Cleveland on the 21st, pull up to the Jones household.
Oh,
I got you.
I've already told them. They didn't tell you.
Oh.
So that's
I'm-
well, they
send
told
me
me
a
not to
plate.
tell you.
Send me a plate.
They told me don't tell Carl.
One of the teams coming to Highmark Stadium, the Bengals, I think that is going to be a really interesting game. I feel like whenever you have Josh Allen and Joe Burrow in the same conversation, it's going to be good.
The last few times that these teams have squared off, they've been eventful. Obviously, the infamous Damar Hamlin game.
Yep.
Then the postseason game where the Bills got knocked off in a snowy environment.
And that was a brutal game.
Yeah, for both sides of the ball. The
No one
fans,
looked good.
No one.
Yeah.
I was at the game and I was
Burn the tape.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Bury it. Burn it and bury it.
It's funny when you speak about the Bills' mishaps in the postseason. No one ever speaks of that game, and for good reason.
I have to share, I was at that game as a fan. There were Bengals fans in front of us, and at first they were cocky, they were turning around, they were laughing at us. By the end of it, they were so nice to us, and that's how you know it was a bad game.
They're
they
like,
felt bad
a little
for
pity,
us.
a
Yeah.
little bit of pity there.
But I'm really intrigued to see how that game shakes out, because when you think of the Bills' front four and all the resources they've put into their defense, well, one way to figure out if they've fixed that issue is up against a premier quarterback like Joe Burrow. Remember the last time they played him in the postseason, the Bengals' offensive line was like down 3 starters, and they still couldn't touch him. Yeah. So this is an opportunity to say, hey, Michael Hoyt and Landon Jackson and T.J. Sanders, this is the game or the type of game that we brought you here to Buffalo to excel in.
One thing you might like about this schedule if you're a Bills fan is that those teams, the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Eagles, with the best offenses, the best passing offenses, Tampa Bay even with Baker Mayfield, they come in the second half of the schedule after Week 6, after the Bills are going to get 2 defensive linemen back from suspension, maybe have some of these young defensive linemen more integrated into the team. So the Bills' defense could be at its best later in the season, and some of their biggest challenges come after they're going to maybe be at full strength.
And I think you can also flip that as well for the younger players where, like, hey, the schedule isn't as tough in the first 6 weeks of the year. So like in Atlanta, like a New Orleans Saints, Jets. So if you're Landon Jackson or TJ Sanders, those are some games where we like to call get your money game, you know, and this is situations where, hey, it's not Patrick Mahomes on the other side where it's hard to take him down. It's name any ex-quarterback for the New Orleans Saints.
Some McCown's going to be a quarterback. It's always a McCown. If all else fails, you don't know the quarterback, just say McCown.
Some random QB is going to be for the Saints, and those are opportunities if you're Landon Jackson or even Deion Walker if he's back by that point to excel early in the year.
Carl, who do you think will be starting at quarterback for the Browns on December 21st in Buffalo when they play Buffalo?
Close my eyes. I'm going to say Shadur Sanders because Jimmy Haslam, their owner, loves attention and money.
Oh, there you go. Fair enough. What do we think about the bye week, where it is?
I think it's helpful because we've talked a little bit about they've got 2 defensive linemen who are suspended the first 6 games. This lands week 7. So now there are rules, the Players Association, where I don't know how much they can actually do inside the facility, if anything at all. They may chain that thing up and go, hey, there's nothing. But it does give them a little break to kind of figure out, okay, how do we fit these guys in now? Because those are 2 big free agent signings that they brought in to contribute. And, you know, they'll be able to come out of that bye and kind of hit the ground running maybe with those 2 new pieces to the puzzle. Do I like how early it is? Not so much. I'd rather see it later for a lot of reasons. A, you know, if I can get out of standing in the cold, that'd be better because it's still at a good time of year. B, I think, you know, if you're the Bills, you want it a little bit later too because, you know, bumps and bruises are going to come. That's still a little earlier in the season than I'm sure they would have wanted.
One of the games I find interesting is this New England game, that October 5th game, Sunday Night Football at New England. You know, the team has already previously played Stephon Diggs against the Texans. I feel like this is going to be completely different against a divisional rival.
It might be a little early in the season for Stephon Diggs to be healthy and ready for that game.
That is true. That's a great point.
I think it's maybe right on that edge of the time he could be coming back, could be coming off PUP. I mean, there's a lot.
We saw what his knee looked like the other day on the sideline at the Knicks game.
A lot
Not
of scar.
pretty. Not pretty.
The scar was nice and thick. I'll just say that. I saw the same thing you were looking at.
Yeah, but I think Stephon Diggs is a lot more likely to be in the lineup when the Bills go to New England in December. Maybe less likely to be at that game, but maybe there's a motivating factor for Stephon Diggs to make sure he's able to suit up for that game. And being October 5th, a bit still early in the calendar, it's a great game for Mac Hollins to come back and not wear shoes and run around. He's going to like that.
I forgot Mac Hollins is now there too.
And that's a team, New England. Look, for the Bills, it's another Sunday against a team that they'll be prepared for. For New England, that's a huge game because they're considered to be the team in the division that's kind of on the come a little bit, and that people look at Drake May and some of the pieces they had. Of course, they got a new head coach and Vrabel. So that's going to be their kind of chance to say, hey, we've arrived and you're going to have to deal with us within the division. If the Bills go out and beat them by 20, it kind of puts them back on their heels a little bit like, guess we're not there yet.
I mean, the NFL put that game on Sunday Night Football for a reason. So clearly
they think so too.
They think this is an opportunity for the Patriots to introduce themselves to the world. Mike Vrabel's back, Drake May. Hey, I know that there's some comparisons to Josh Allen. I'll put the brakes on those. But, you know, some people think that he's the up-and-coming guy in the NFL. I think it'd be a good opportunity for him to be like, hey, I'm also in the NFL as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. What are some of the other things that you guys are seeing on this schedule? Of course, you know, we kind of had an idea of what was going to be. Any surprises?
I was surprised that the Bills didn't get a game on Christmas. It seemed like they were a team that made sense for that, both as a marquee team. I thought the NFL probably liked the idea of maybe having snow on the television sets on Christmas Day, a white Christmas game here in Buffalo. And there were strong rumors that that would be the case, whether it be prime time or sometimes early in the day. We learned that earlier today that the Christmas games were announced and the Bills weren't one of them, and I was surprised that that wasn't the case.
I don't know if there were any surprises. I think that one of the things that really jumped out at me was when you look at like the big four, the monster four that they play, when you're talking about the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Eagles, and the Bengals, they're really spread out through the schedule. You remember back to last year, there was that gauntlet that they played, and it was the Rams and the Lions and the Chiefs and the Eagles. I think those were the four. And you looked and went, "Ooh, if they're not careful, they could go 0-4 in that stretch." That's how tough that stretch was. They really spread them out because, I mean, you got the Ravens at the beginning, obviously right off the bat, and then you go 2 months until you see the Chiefs, and then you go over a month before you see the Bengals, and then you go a couple of weeks before you see the Eagles. So those 4 games are spread out really nicely for the Bills. They don't have, bang, bang. It's not like it's Bengals, Eagles at the end of the year. So I think that's pretty fortunate for them.
Though I guess for me, the one thing that kind of shocked me a little bit was the amount of primetime games they had to start the year. I know that was something that they did as well last year, but when you look at the games that are on primetime in the first 2 months of the year, the Ravens week 1, the Dolphins week 3, then week 5, the Patriots, and then also Monday Night Football against the Falcons. I'm kind of shocked that the Falcons are a primetime game now. Listen, Michael Penix, his second year in the league, that may be an opportunity for him to introduce his name to the big stage.
I mean, look, Jacksonville was a primetime game last year, so they're looking at Josh Allen going, if we put you on TV, people are going to watch.
If they put you at quarterback on the other team,
Yeah,
that's pushing.
They'll watch the first quarter. Then Josh will be hanging out in the second, third, and fourth. So, yeah.
But that was
that
my big
point,
surprise, though, for sure.
The fact that Kansas City is a 425 game, you would think that the league would do anything they could.
Remember, the 425 Sunday window is the biggest television audience that the NFL gets. So if it was a 1 o'clock game, that would be something that we wouldn't expect. But it's not prime time, but for the NFL's purpose, those are prime time games when you're playing these games. And you can see the Bengals, the Chiefs, and the Eagles are all 425 games at home. So those are marquee television games that the NFL put on the Bills' schedule.
I guess I'm thinking in terms of New England being a Sunday Night Football game versus the Chiefs. So that was where my surprise came from.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how the schedule making works, but I do know that CBS has a lot of dibs on what games they can pick. Every single year for as long as 15 from Kansas City and 17 is here in Buffalo, CBS is going to be like, hey, whatever, before y'all do anything and have any funny business.
They're earmarking that.
425, Bengals, Chiefs. All right, y'all can do everything else that y'all want.
And that's great for us.
Exactly. So
Game's on 4.
That game will be on 4. Don't forget, November 2nd.
Any final thoughts on this schedule before we have to say goodbye?
I think it sets up for the Bills to have a really good record again. I mean, no matter how it would have kind of come together. I look at this schedule and go, this is a 13-win schedule. I do. Look, they've got the 4 monster games. They're all at home. I mean, so 2-2 in those 4 monster games. The Houston Texans, for some reason, like Buffalo, the Bills just don't play well down there, and it's down there. The Texans have some talent. That could be one that trips them up, and there's always one that's kind of randomly, jump up and bite them. But I look at this schedule and I go, I could see them coming away with 13 wins. I mean, that is a ton of wins, and if that is the number, that would put Sean McDermott at 99 regular season wins at the end of the year. So that means the home opener of next year in the new stadium, because they're going to open the year next year in that new stadium, he'd have a chance to get his 100th career win, as if there needed to be more hype around that game. But it's kind of something that kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, for me, I think it's the fact that the schedule really sets up for a stretch run at the end for it to be interesting. When you have just the month of December in general, the Bengals, if their defense wants to show up this year, I don't know if they want to look like a college football team again or not, but if they look like a professional team this season, I think that's a good way to start off the month. And then going to New England, I presume they'll be maybe not a playoff caliber team, but they're going to be frisky. They're not going to be an easy out, in my honest opinion. We're going to ignore Cleveland. But then the Eagles, I think that's a nice 3-week stretch right there where the Bills can really pump out their chest heading into the postseason.
I see 13 wins on the schedule, too, depending on whether they need to win that last game against the Jets. That really does play a role there. But also, that might not be enough. The Bills might need 14 wins, 15 wins to get home field advantage against the Chiefs. And not only does that give them a better chance of going to the Super Bowl, winning the conference championship game, but maybe it sets up a situation where the last game at Highmark Stadium is the AFC championship game at home. Bills win that game, they can tear down the goalposts and leave with anything they want from the stadium and then go on to the Super Bowl.
The Chiefs' schedule is much tougher than the Bills. I looked over it briefly, and a lot of that's because of the division. I think their division is much stronger than the Bills' division. So I think 13. You're right. It might be 14. I don't know. It needs to be any more than that.
Regardless, a lot of excitement. I guess we'll see come September. Thank you guys so much. That's all the time we have tonight for this special edition of the Evening Dish. We will see you again on Friday.